My name is Cheyne Yanagisawa. I'm 33 years old. I have two little boys, Grayson, who's 5, and Jackson, who's 2. My youngest, Ryden, will be born next month in April. And my wife, Jenna. We live here in Grand Terrace, and we've been coming to Azure Hills ever since I met her back in 2014. I was recently baptized in January of this year, and I'm the director of the basketball ministry here at Azure Hills, and I love teaching Sabbath school. I love being with the kids, and I really love learning more stories like they do. That's why I like teaching, because I can learn the stories with them. So I really enjoy that, and I really enjoy being here and doing these things.
Well, my name is Tom Smith. How can it be? I'm 72 years of age already. And I am the husband of Sue. We have been married for 45 years, coming up in a couple of months. We have 4 adult children. The oldest is 42, and the youngest is about 33. She's going to get me if I get it wrong. I'm an ordained Christian minister, Seventh-day Adventist minister. I've worked as a church pastor for 12 years. Spent 20 years on active duty in the United States Navy and the Marine Corps. And after that, I went to work at the Department of Veteran Affairs for another 15 years. Along the way, they sent me back to get some training as a marital and family therapist. And so all that is behind me now, because 2 years ago I retired. And here I am. We have been members of the Azure Hills Church for about the last, 6 years or so. And we're involved. I've observed Cheyne teaching Sabbath school. He's a good one. Sometimes I just play the guitar and help out here and there. I'm one of the elders and do some visiting from time to time.
When you were around 33, what were your biggest concerns or your biggest goals or, objectives that you were thinking about being a husband, a dad around that time?
When I was in my early 30s, I was feeling sort of overwhelmed because we had 4 children. And the big concern, I think, is a concern that every father, every mother, every parent has. How are we going to do this? It seemed an overwhelming task. I was particularly worried about finances. How are we going to make it? We've got so many things to do. I was worried whether I was going to be a decent husband, a good father, a decent provider. I was worried about whether I was going to be able to get these kids out of diapers and into preschool and then into grade school and then into high school and then college. And how are we going to fund that? And are we going to go to the poorhouse? And are we going to make it? And I think it's pretty much the same today as it was way back in the early 80s when we did this. What is it that concerns you as a dad?
I was gonna say, it's like I feel like I'm talking, to the mirror. We have our 3rd baby coming in April, and so that's the thought is, we can't have one each. We have a 3rd one now. So how do you give attention to all 3? I want to be a good dad. I want to give them all attention. But when there's a 3rd one, you have to kind of play zone defense. You can't play man-to-man defense anymore. So that is a concern. And obviously financial, I think that's everyone's concern. You want the best for your kids. And so it's a whole nother body. My 2 boys eat as much as I do as it is. So having a 3rd one coming, it scares me. So, it's kind of funny you say that, because as my first one was growing up, it was like, he's not potty trained. When is he going to, and then he gets potty trained. And it's like, why did I stress about it?
I thought when our kids came along, when we got the kids out of diapers, we were going to be rich because we wouldn't have to pay for diapers anymore. But there's always something else and something else after that. But the thing that we discovered is that somehow we make it. And the challenges, even though they seem overwhelming, you take them one step at a time. You don't have to solve 25 years of problems in 25 days. You just kind of go with the flow, and you do the best you can, and you support each other as husband and wife, and as a father, and as parents. And even though the days seem long, the years are fast, and there they go. And here we are. Here I am now at 72, a grandparent of 5 children, 5 grandkids. So it goes fast, and even though it seems it's slow, Cheyne, it's moving at rapid pace.
I feel like, especially having 2, you're so busy. Even if you're not like physically busy doing sports or activities, you're just busy trying to get to lunch and then get to bath time and then get to dinner.
Exactly.
It just flows. I mean, already, my wife's due in April, and I feel like we just found out she was pregnant. It just happens, and now here we are. And like someone at work said, "Oh, when's the baby due?" And I said, "Oh, mid-April." And they said, "Oh, next month?" And I said, "No, it's March. Yeah, it's next month." I'm like, "Oh, wow, there's gonna be a 3rd baby here next month." So. I definitely hear that. And if you don't mind me asking a second question, kind of follow up on what you said, not to give too much backstory, but, my dad left when I was 6 months old. So my goal has always been be present, be there for my kids, be a good dad. Yeah. What would you say was your key to balancing being a husband as well as being a dad? Because I feel like sometimes I can be guilty of, I'm just focused on, I need to raise these kids right, I need to do it, and then, you kind of lack, or I kind of lack the being a husband part of it. Was there anything that helped you, or is that the golden question?
It's a challenge. When you're a parent and a spouse, it's like you've got competing principles there. The kids need so much attention, and they're like sponges. They just need. They're a bundle of needs. And yet, we too, who made these kids, we have our own needs. So you do the best you can. We used to take our kids out. I used to take them out for what we call special time. About once a week, I'd take on Thursday night one of the kids. I'd take them to, the boys I'd take to a fire station and have them look around a fire truck, or I'd take them to walk on the beach and find shells, or I'd take them out for ice cream. Just something quick and easy, or maybe for a bike ride, just the 2 of us together. And so there was individual time for the kids. And we would try to do the same, Sue and I, when we were younger and raising the kids. And sometimes we were so challenged, we would barely have enough money to pay a babysitter, but we went out and just held hands and walked on the boardwalk, and that was enough, and maybe got a little treat or something, and that was good to connect. When she was in school, and we had 4 children, and she started PT school, imagine. We would get up at 5 in the morning, and in a sleepy sort of way, go for a walk together, with one eye closed, it seemed like, just to connect a little bit at the beginning of the day, before the kids got up, before it all started, breakfast, getting ready for school, packing lunches, getting them off to school,
the blur of a
getting
day.
Me off to work, getting her off to work, and It's a challenge of biblical proportions, I think, raising kids. But it's the best thing.
It is.
It's the best.
It really is.
What have you learned along the way? I mean, in terms of what's working for you, what's not working, Cheyne, in terms of being a father?
A dad? Oh, that's a great question. I think what I'm trying to do is, well, a lot of things, but one is I'm trying to be a lot more faith-based with my kids, which I think is huge. I mean, obviously we're here doing this for the church, but you know, that's something where I grew up knowing about Jesus, praying to Jesus, but I never went to church. I never went to Sabbath school and these type of things. Right. And so, like I said, even now when I teach, I'm learning these stories for the first time, like truly. And so it's why they'll say like, oh, you've taught already. And it's like, no, like I want to learn about this. Like I've heard these names before, but I have no clue what they mean. I know Noah, you know, everyone knows Noah, right? Everyone knows Moses, Adam and Eve. That's about where, and then Jesus, you know, but like, that's it. So I hear all these other names and it's like, was that a good person? Was that a bad person? You know, I have no idea. And so I think it's really cool. Grayson will come home and he'll talk about Jonah and the whale, and he'll be telling me these things, and I'm sitting there like learning from him. My 4-year-old is teaching me, about these things. And so I think that's really helped a lot. It's helped a lot too because, kids are scared of the dark, or kids are nervous, or these things like that. And so him and I'm sure my wife and him have it too, but just personally, him and I have this thing where we can pray about it. And it helps him. It's something where he'll tell me, I'm having bad thoughts, Daddy, I can't sleep. I'm thinking about a coyote breaking into our house. And so we'll pray about it, dear Jesus, please protect us tonight, things like that. And he will fall asleep. And so it's like, this is really cool to have this in our life. Not that I had a bad upbringing or anything, but I was scared, and I would just be scared, I never really thought of these type of things. And so I think that's one of the biggest things for me.
The idea of spiritual training, I think, for kids, one of the key things for us was consistency. Kids thrive on consistency. So, they have, they come home from school, they have playtime, they finish their homework, there's supper time, bath time, and then a little story, a little worship time. That was important to them and to us, to have consistency, which we were able to manage. And they grow through that, and they learn, and they take some things in. And something I've learned along the way is children become who they become. It's the idea that my parents wanted me to adopt their value system, their worldview, their view of God when I was a child coming up. And then I became a teenager and an adult, and I had to figure out what I believed. I know what my parents believed, but what do I believe? And it's the same with our own children. They know and have been exposed through the church, through Sabbath school, through years and years of Christian education. Now they are adults, and they have to choose. And there's the tough thing for a parent. Just like our parents hope we choose exactly the way they have chosen. We hope and pray for the same with our children. But sometimes they choose, our children it's a mixed bag. They are spiritual in some ways we think, where did this come from? Where did they learn that? So, what do? You love them, you support them in their journey, and it took me a long time to get from where I was as a kid to where I landed as an adult in my faith relationship. Some wise person once said, God draws straight using crooked lines. So my journey from where I was to where I ended up, my faith journey, wasn't from here to there. It was kind of like out that way, and it had some twists and turns. And sometimes we learn by our mistakes more than our successes. That's what I found.
Yes, I relate to that completely. I mean, I was baptized this year at 33. It wasn't, I went to church, and when I was 13, I made the church. It was kind of up to now, a lifelong journey so far. And I loved what you said. You learn from your mistakes more. I actually adopted that into our basketball league because I kind of let everyone know, like, this is a church league. It's not some travel team, like, we need to not take it seriously, and the kids need to learn how to lose graciously because we're all, no one goes undefeated. If you're talking sports, there's always, if there's 30 teams in football, 29 are sad at the end of the day, and
even baseball, the highest batting average ever, I think, was Ted Williams. He had a .413.
So he failed 6 times.
10 times he didn't get a hit.
Exactly. And so I actually, really emphasize that, like, it's okay to lose. Like, it's okay if your team doesn't win. Like, you learn from it. You're upset for 5 minutes, and then you go get ice cream and you move on. It's you learn from those things. And so I appreciate you saying that.
So I'm one of 11 children.
Oh, wow.
I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters. And, we ran in packs at home. And it was a small little house in Brooklyn, New York. And I found a way when I was about in second grade to get some time with my mother. I noticed she went off to church at 6:30 a.m. She'd put a big pot of oatmeal on, boil the water, and run out, put it on soft flame. And I said, "Mom, where you going?" She went up to church for a half hour. And can I go with you? So we started that habit. And for years and years, I went to church with her as a little boy. And I learned to love the things of God from my mother. That was a consistent thing that she did. And even though when I became a teenager, it was a little here, a little there, those roots, those seeds took root, I should say. And, I was able to build upon that when I had a faith experience in my early 20s. Yeah.
What was that faith experience?
Well, I was after college, and I had my heart set, thinking I had fallen in love, and I had great affection for this girl I met in college, and all of a sudden she said, adios. And so I had this kind of crisis, this existential crisis. Yeah. Who do you trust when the one you trust the most lets you down? And this is where I sort of began to think about the things of God. Is God trustworthy? Is God there? Will the divine let me down in the same way as I was let down? So it led me to just begin to read in a way I hadn't read before. And I came across a series of lectures that introduced me to a different expression of Christianity. I was raised in a Catholic church, and then I came across these series of lectures that was sponsored, I didn't know it then, but it was by the Adventist Church. And it blossomed, and I found a real source of comfort and hope in the midst of heartache.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes where God reaches us, in the midst of crisis. And I've found that in my own work through the years. I think C.S. Lewis was the one who said that God whispers to us in our joys, but he shouts in our sorrows. And that was certainly my experience. And I find it's true. I'd rather not have troubles. I'd rather not have sorrows. But sometimes that's a way to kind of, that God gets our attention.
Well, similarly, I had someone that I was dating, high school, early college, things like that, and just all of a sudden decided she wanted a different person. And so it crushed me for a bit. And that was one of those, like, oh, this stuff happens to people? Like, why? Why does this, just happen to people? How can someone have a change of heart?
Yeah.
So I hear you on that, but there was actually 2 times where my grandma, who helped raise me, got sick. And so long story short, I was recruited to go play football at UCLA, but I stayed back to help with her and things like that. And when she decided to pull the plug, essentially, she was on dialysis. If you stop, you have about a week is what they give you. So she decided, I'm done. She said, I'm confident in my faith. Wow. I'm tired of this. And, you're upset. You're, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And she said, because I have Jesus and I'm tired of this. And so her last wish was a church service. And she wanted a church service at home with her family before she died. And so it was very, like, wow, like I've never been around someone who knows they're going to die. Wow. And all she wants to do is worship God, worship Jesus. And it was very eye-opening. Like, wow, she could essentially ask us for anything, right? Oh, I want to take me to this place. This is my dying wish. And it was like, no, I trust in God to be there for me. I want to sing songs, and that's what I want to do. And that's really when I started, I want to look into this a little bit more.
It's pretty inviting, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to kind of want to pursue that more. Fast forward a couple years, my absolute best friend, who his whole life always told me he was atheist, didn't believe in God, all these things. I wouldn't push it. I don't know how to push it, right? I don't really know these things as much, but I would just kind of tell him, I believe the opposite, and that was kind of it. Yeah. About a month before he passed, he was saved and found God, and so it was very, wow, like he found God and all these things, but then he ended up committing suicide, unfortunately. But that was another moment where I was thinking, well, hang on, he just found you. Mm-hmm. And then a month later,
like
you let him kill himself. Yeah. So it was this again, it was like, well, hang on, that's not cool, God. Why would you let him do that? He found you. Why didn't you protect him? And, you kind of tussle with those things back and forth. But ironically, or maybe not ironically, probably not ironically, I met Jenna about a month before that had happened. Mm-hmm. And she was the one who was going to church, and she would, hey, I'm going to church Saturday, and I would say, I'll go with you. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. Let's go. Yeah. And so some of our first dates, we would go to church, and things like that. So then it was kind of looking back now, I've never really thought about it until right now, but it was a blessing that Jenna happened right before my best friend happened, because I had this church every Saturday to kind of weigh out that, why would you let that happen? But then I'm going to learn about, there's more layers to all this type of stuff.
When you encounter that sort of, that deep loss, the suicide of a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right up there. That's in the big leagues.
It was a weird time where it tested my faith and trust. But at the same time, I was learning to trust and have faith and those things. Like it's interesting how that all kind of tied in.
How God uses all these things, these disappointments and these things we don't understand.
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to anyone who says, I feel like God's the only way to make sense of some of these things. Like it's, like those type. I don't know. There's things that happen, something like that, or. Because meeting Jenna really is what led me to this much more fulfilling life of faith in Christ and things like that. But it happened right before, arguably, my hardest moment, which is probably when I needed it. If she wasn't there yet, like if I met her 3 months later, I may have been in a different, mental state or, whatever it may be. So it's.
The same was true for me when I was in a broken place. I came across a group of individuals who expressed empathy and concern and compassion, and who walked with me in the midst of my bewilderment, my confusion, my disappointment. It's something how God uses people. We have the scriptures and they teach us about God, but sometimes we're not even there yet. We see God's caring through others. Mm-hmm. And you saw it through your wife. I saw it through these people I came across far, far away from where I grew up. And that was the means that God used to draw me to himself.
I mean, it's different for everyone, but at the time it's almost like you have no idea that's what's happening, that these people are there helping you. You just are like, oh yeah, my friends are here. Oh yeah, this girl's nice. Like this is helping. But then it's like years later, it's like, oh, that was more. That was more than just that. It was something deeper. Yeah. So it's interesting how in the moment we can be so blinded by some of that stuff.
There's a little story in the Old Testament. I think it's Jacob, where he wakes up from this dream and he says, God was in this place, but I didn't know it. Sometimes we go through life and God was there, but we didn't know it at the time. Mm-hmm. But looking back, we see, oh my, the leading of the Spirit here and there. And that was exactly what I needed when I needed it. Yeah. Wow. But it's painful sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But a lot of it's joyful too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are joys and sorrows, and that's the way it is, and I think ever has been. You mentioned you had a nephew. What is it? It was going into the...
Oh, my little brother.
Oh, a brother.
My brother, yes.
Your little brother.
So he's, again, to make a long story short, my dad that left when I was 6 months old, he had a boy and I met him when I was 25, so I didn't even know he existed.
Ooh.
And when I was 25, about a month before I got married, I got a message from an 18-year-old girl. She said, "Hey, I'm your little sister, known about you my whole life, but I'm finally 18, I have Facebook, you know." She's like, so-and-so's my dad, and I was like, that was my dad.
Wow.
She said, "Me and my brother want to meet you if you're up for it." And so I was like, yes.
So you had two siblings you didn't know about.
Didn't even know about them. They lived in Escondido my whole life, 45 minutes away, yeah. So long story short, he now is in the Navy. He just got home in January, I believe, from his basic boot camp and training and things like that.
Wow.
And so now he's doing more training. He wants to be, like a big dog. He's very fit, very for it. But yeah, so he's doing that right now. We can only see him on weekends because he's training all week and stuff. But yeah, so I guess on those lines, any advice for a family member of someone like that?
Well, I'd say generally speaking, service to one's country is an honorable thing.
Yeah.
People generally enlist in the military when they're 18 to 22 years of age. Is that how old your brother is?
23.
He's 23, okay.
22 or 23, we get it.
So
right?
those are growing up years.
Yeah.
You change a lot in those early years and you mature. Mm-hmm. It's a great place to mature in the military because they teach you discipline, they teach you to be at the appointed place at the appointed time, and they teach you a skill set. You take all these tests and they put you in an area where they can teach you and you will excel and hopefully help you as well as the military for the rest of your life. So it's an honorable thing.
Yeah.
And also there's the benefit of coming out with the GI Bill, which will enable not only your brothers but others who put on the uniform to take advantage of advanced education should they choose to in the future. It doesn't have to be college, it can be a trade school, so he can grow and become and all that. I would say for your brother to show up in time and do his best, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. I think, I don't know, is your brother a believer in any way?
As far as I know, unfortunately, we haven't really had those talks necessarily, but as far as I've understood,
In our own community of faith, in the Adventist community, it's a different military these days than in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. It was a draft back then, and so there were more accommodations for what they call conscientious objectors, people who wanted to serve but had some concerns about religious teachings and principles they went by. In the case of a Sabbath keeper, an Adventist Sabbath keeper, there were some concerns.
Yeah.
So it was more accommodating when it was a draft, because they didn't ask for it, they were called.
Yeah.
Now it's all volunteer. So they used to call the people who were drafted, instead of conscientious objectors, they called them conscientious cooperators. They cooperated as much as possible. And I think the same principle is true today for your brother and for those maybe in our community of faith who decide to put a uniform on, to cooperate as much as possible, not to focus on what I can't do, but rather than what I can do. And if a person is working hard those 6 days and are asking for special privileges on the 7th day, they see a hard charger doing their work above and beyond, the chances are they'll be more likely to provide some allowances for special privileges to have a day off if they choose. But not if you're a slacker, and you're just kind of doing the least. Do your best, and that's the kind of people they want to keep around. Yeah,
he's very mature to me in my eyes when I see him, just the way he handles himself. And I mean, I've thought that ever since I met him, really. It's like, oh, wow, like, you've got your head on you, so to speak. So when he said, he wanted to do this, your first thought is like, why? Like, why do you want to do that? That's scary. At least that's my thought. But no, I think he's probably ideal, the ideal person for it.
He'll grow up and become who he's going to become, and they'll help him with that.
Yeah.
Tell me about your name. It's a long Japanese name. You don't look like a long Japanese name person.
No, so my full name is Cheyne Yanagisawa. So my mom is 50% Japanese, and then her dad, my grandfather, is 100% or close to 100% Japanese. And so his parents were actually an arranged marriage in Japan, and they moved to Hawaii, and that's where my grandpa and his siblings were all born. And then when he was 18, he came to California, lost in a drag race to my grandma, who was 100% Caucasian, and then went from there.
Yeah,
so,
I like that.
But yeah, so it's I love my Japanese culture. I know I'm only a quarter, but my middle name is, I don't know how far back it goes, but the firstborn male of every generation has it.
And how do you say that?
So it's Hiroshi, so Hiroshi.
Hiroshi.
Yes. And so my son Grayson has it because he's the first of his generation. So it's cool. It's really cool. My family are descendants of samurai. So that's super cool to know. Wow. Actually, a funny story, when I was in undergrad, you have to pick like a cultural class. Like it's just part of the like undergrad, things that have nothing to do with your major, but you have to pick one. So I did, Japanese studies, like that'll be fun. And they were talking about my ancestor in the class. And so I was just like, I'm actually related to him. And no one believes me. And it's like, no, really, like that's wow. That's my ancestor. So we actually went to Tokyo when my wife was pregnant with Grayson, my firstborn. And when we were there was a garden that he had like built.
Oh my.
And so we got to go to this, and it was just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
We spent, I think, about 3 years in Japan as I was serving in the Marine Corps. And learned to love the Japanese culture, and it was a beautiful stepping stone for us. Before I was stationed there, I was out at sea forever. Even missed the birth of one of our kids, just because I was out at sea, and I didn't get to meet little Christiana until she was a couple of months old.
Oh wow!
And so when we got orders to Japan, I thought, oh my, what's that going to be like?
Yeah.
But it turned out to be wonderful. We were in Okinawa, and it was very family friendly. It's just what we needed.
Yeah, I loved it there. It's it made me proud to be like, oh, this is part of my heritage. Like everyone was so polite. It was so clean. Like it was it was amazing. I've always told Jenna, if we had to move somewhere where they don't speak English as their first language, that you'd want to pick, English because, but it was great. It was very hard vegetarian wise. I don't know if you're vegetarian or how that was. We ate a lot of egg salad sandwiches at the 7-Eleven. Yeah. We actually went to get ramen one time, and where it says meat, we left it blank because we didn't want meat. Oh, yeah. And they were coming, and they were like, you didn't pick your meat. And we were like, yes, we don't want it. And they were just like, you didn't pick it. And we were like, yes, no meat. And they're like, yes, no meat. Like, what meat? And we were like, vegetarian, we don't want meat. And they were like, okay. And then it was like a foreign concept. To me, God means everything, because without him, I don't have my wife or my kids or this sense of calm that I have these days. Like I said, I've always believed, but now doing, I've been doing Bible study with Pastor Tara before I was baptized, and just learning basic things about death, about life, that I just thought I understood, but now I do. It's just this whole sense of like, oh, I have this great, happy life because of God. Every time I felt like I can't do that, gotten through it. Like you said, you're nervous about finances. How are we going to do this? And you get through it. And it's, how did we do that? All the glory to God. And so to me, it's just everything. Like it's what I tried. I mean, my hat says pray. My shirt has Jesus on it. Like it's kind of
It's who you are.
It's who I am now, and it's it's the happiest I've ever been, and it's the calmest I've ever been. And so that's the biggest thing for me is I'm always stressed about stuff, always uptight and anxious. Will things be right? Will things be perfect? And then doing Bible study, it was like, well, Jesus was the only one who was perfect, and not everyone liked him, so it's like, why am I trying to please everyone, or why am I trying to make it, so to me it's God's everything.
Well, the older I get, it says in the scriptures, it's appointed 70, that's 70, or by good measure 80. Well, I'm 70 plus 2, almost 3 now, and all of a sudden, I realize that in a sense I'm on borrowed time here, and so each day, each year comes as a gift, trying to keep myself healthy and active and in many, many ways. And the things of God, the person of the Lord Christ, I think is more focused and central to me than really ever in my life. And he's always been precious to me. From the time I was little, got away in those teen years, had a conversion in my early 20s, and went to seminary and learned all these things. And I think there was a time when my love for the church was kind of equal for my love for God. I've come to the place in my life where I like the church, and I'm part of the church, very much so, but I love the Lord. Like the church, love the Lord. The purpose of the church is to lead us to the Lord of the church and to help us in our relationship with him. And we do that. But it is the Lord himself that gives to us the gift of life, the gift of forgiveness and acceptance and hope and health and life. And so my hope is in the person of Christ. And that's good enough. Yeah.
Amen.
And my help is in the person of Christ.
Yep.